From Mamma Mia, welcome to the Spills Watch Party, where we unpack the biggest shows that the entire world is talking about. My name is Manisha Iswaran. I'm the executive producer of The Spill, as well as this podcast, and today we are talking about the acclaimed medical show that has really gripped the world's attention, The Pitt, which is about to come back for season 2. So luckily, I'm joined by two of the biggest fans and experts of The Pitt around.
Hi, I'm Grace Rouvray. I'm an executive producer here at Mamma Mia, and I've been in the film and TV industry for about 15 years. I actually came to The Pitt through my midwife. She said it was the most accurate medical show that she had ever seen, apart from one scene, which we will get to, but I was absolutely hooked. I think it's one of the best TV shows out there.
I am Jess Clark. I'm the travel and food editor here at Mamma Mia, and I'm also a medical drama tragic. I get to watch TV for work, but I absolutely binged The Pitt for pure pleasure. Season 1 consumed me. I think I told every single person I know to watch it. I was raised on ER, so it also hit me right in the nostalgia feels, and it kind of gave me what I was missing from medical dramas recently.
Well, today we are going to basically get you across everything that you need to know before The Pitt Season 2 drops on January 8th on HBO Max. So just a quick rundown on the show before we get into all the juicy goss. The Pitt Season 1 was an absolute hit. It had an average of 10 million viewers per episode. So kind of one of those rare shows that's both a ratings monster and also did so well in the awards as well. And it's formed this really special emotional connection to healthcare workers all around the world, which we're all going to deep dive into a little bit later. It also absolutely cleaned up at the Emmys this year, and anyone who's seen it knows it has a really interesting format of being 15-hour-long episodes covering a 15-hour shift in the ER. So it has that real sort of real-world medical feel that's not that glossy, romantic medical drama like some of the others are. So before we dive into everything you need to know ahead of season 2, obviously this episode will contain season 1 spoilers, so if you haven't finished all of that yet, go finish that up, have a nice little binge, and then come back for the pre-season warm-up. So Jess, we've all seen season 1, but for a lot of people it might have been a little while and you need that little refresh before you plunge straight into season 2. So can you give us a little rundown of where we left things and what those key cliffhangers were after the first season?
All right, so at the end of season 1, we've just come off a massive 15-hour shift. We've just had this mass trauma event with the shooting at Pitt Fest. Everyone has been pushed to their limits. Every doctor, every med student, every patient, every intern, everyone is just completely at the end. They're at their breaking point. And we're all left wondering, like, what the hell are these people going to do now? The thing I loved most about the end of the season, there wasn't just one cliffhanger. It's not a huge, big cliffhanger like some other dramas. Instead, there are just a bunch of unanswered questions that we're going into season 2 going, what's going to happen to these people? So we've got Dr. Langdon, who's, his drug problem has been exposed. He's been given a bit of an ultimatum. If you want to come back, you have to go to rehab. You have to do all these programs. We've got Dana, who appears to have turned her back on the ER. She's taken down her family photos. Dr. Robbie says, see you on Monday. She doesn't respond. We've got the interns and the med students who have kind of had their first day on the job, and it was traumatizing to say the least.
To start of how they were at the beginning of the day,
So
that like
bright.
even Mel being like, I'm so happy to be here. I'm so excited, to how she finishes.
No, I mean, you have Dr. Javadi who kind of goes, this has turned me off the medical profession for good, not just emergency medicine. So we did have a bit of a moment of levity in the last episode where they kind of have a bit of a debrief and a drink in the park, but there is this implication of this is just another day on the job. Tomorrow, we get to do this all again, so who knows what will happen. There's no clean ending for anybody. There's no big reset. There's no kind of big win. It's just, I guess we just go on with life. And the biggest question going into season 2, I think, is how does everyone move on from this huge, big traumatic event?
And when you guys both watched that last episode, did it give you that real leave you wanting more kind of feeling? Or was it one of those shows where it sort of felt like, okay, I've sort of had that dose of that and I can wait for the next one? Or were you really like hankering for the next episode?
I felt like there was closure in terms of like the structure of a series. Like there was no sort of, oh, what's going to happen that I need to know in the next episode? But it does have that forward momentum of, well, this is just another shift. And so even though they're leaving, that whole world is existing that we're not seeing. And I like that kind of like the show is always in motion kind of thing. So I'm excited for it to come back to go, well, what are they going to do with it? But in terms of any of the storylines, I felt quite satisfied as a viewer that it had closed everything off for me for that whole season.
And this show, I mean, there's obviously so many medical dramas out there. Jess, you've said that you are a medical TV show tragic. There's Grey's Anatomy, ER, House. I mean, what do you think, Grace, is it about the Pitt that has cut through in such a big way?
I think the Pitt does things differently in terms of how the show is structured. And there's a few shows that are sort of doing things. There's a few shows that are sort of looking at themes and going, well, how can we do them differently? Like if you look back at just 2025, you've got Adolescence and The Pitt. And these are two shows that aren't described by the narrative logline. They're described by like, oh, that show that's in one take or that show that's in one shift. And I think that's a really interesting way to cut through in this, like a procedural setting where there is such an oversaturated market. And I think the other thing that they do really well is it leads with story first, like in the stories of the patients, rather than, as much as we all love Grey's Anatomy here, they do patient stories, but as the show goes on, they sort of fade the patient stories out and it all becomes personal drama. But here we're propelled forward by the patients, by comments on the industry. Like that is our kind of device that keeps us going forward. And there's not many shows that really stick to that format. So it will be interesting to see what they do with the next season.
That's true. It is very different to a Grey's Anatomy and other shows in that way, in that it's a lot more of a real gritty sort of vibe to it. Jess, what were some of the standout things that made it such a great show for you in season 1 and made you be like, wow, this is really like one of my best watches recently?
I think what I loved the most, and I think why it's resonated with so many people, is that it's not trying to make hospital work cinematic. It's not this like beautiful, it's beautifully shot obviously, but it's truthful and that's dramatic enough. Like the medical cases are the storyline. I know, again, Grey's Anatomy, but there's random cases that kind of push the plot lines of the doctors along, whereas the cases themselves in the Pitt are the main storyline. They're the main focus. Like the medicine is the main character. And I also think it really respects the audience's intelligence. I mean, as someone who has watched a lot of medical dramas and medical documentaries, there's so much terminology. And I think you're so, like, from the very first moment, the very first episode of The Pitt, you are thrown into this medical world and they're using jargon, they're using their terms, and you're kind of like, this is chaotic.
Care, you don't know.
No, and it's like,
catch up.
I'm going to go with it. Like by the end of it, I'm like, I think I could do a chest tube. No, I definitely couldn't. But, it doesn't over-explain, doesn't kind of handhold. It's just like, here's what's happening. We're going to drop you in the chaos. Learn to adapt, just like the interns and the med students.
That point of difference that you talk about, I was listening to a podcast by The New Yorker. They do like a critic podcast, and they were comparing The Pitt to This Is Going to Hurt, which is based on the memoir by Adam Kay, which we actually interviewed him on No Filter. We'll link to that in the show notes. But he kind of talked about the NHS in this grungy, no glossy, as you said, Jess, like this really unglossy way. And I think The Pitt does this. It doesn't make it seem like a whimsical world where we save lives. It drops you into the gritty and the problems within the industry, which are devastating to watch.
Absolutely. And we'll get a little bit more into the realism of the Pitt and that way that it resonated for healthcare workers in a little bit. But I wanted to talk about the Emmys because the Pitt had a huge night at the Emmys this year. It won Outstanding Drama Series. Noah Wyle secured the lead actor Emmy, and supporting actress also went to
Catherine Lanassa. She plays Dana, the head charge nurse, and she was just incredible.
Amazing.
Like I actually read that she spent a lot of time with a charge nurse to like fully incorporate the essence of what they do in the hospital.
So they absolutely cleaned up at the awards, and a really big theme of the night was them dedicating those wins to the medical community, who have really embraced this show.
And the Emmy goes to Noah Wyle.
Oh my goodness. And mostly to anybody who's going on shift tonight or coming off shift tonight, thank you for being in that job. This is for you.
Jess, what did you think when you saw them cleaning up at the awards? Was that a surprise to you? Do you think the Pitt was a bit of an underdog, or was it what you expected?
I mean, not to me, because I think well-deserved in every single category. But I think for many TV fans, it did feel like a bit of an underdog in some respects, mostly because medical dramas don't really dominate award seasons anymore. And it was up against some pretty heavy hitters. Like you had Adolescence, you had Severance, you've got, like, TV's really good at the moment, and the Pitt is up there. I think also the format was a bit of a structural gamble. You've got 15 episodes in 1 hour shifts. So it did pay off. It's so immersive and relentless. It's unlike anything else that's on television. So I think that made it stand apart from its competitors. Also super authentic. And I think that was a theme for a lot of the winners in the Emmys this year. I mean, adolescence, again, you can't you can't compete. You can.
No. Well, adolescence was like everyone would watch that because it was something that had never been done before. I was like, have you seen the one take one? And then, of course, because of the themes of adolescence, which we could have a whole recap of adolescence just because it's so good and everyone should watch it again. But the Pitt does kind of come with that heavyweight energy as well.
Yeah. I think most importantly, and this is why it was such a standout at the Emmys, is that it's old school TV done right.
Yes.
And it's grounded, it's human, and it's messy. And it was kind of a change from these really high concept and really hyper stylized shows that we have seen dominating the award season. So look, a welcome change for me.
I think on that of saying it feels like that a classic TV show. It felt like the medical version of The West Wing to me, in that it is like the whole show is walk and talk. But whereas like with Aaron Sorkin's dialogue, it's quippy and it's like a bit smug in like how knowledgeable it is. But with the Pitt, any of those quippy comedic lines seem to just be a joke left in for healthcare workers, and then they just move on. It's stuff that if would go over our head even, and some of the recaps when we talk about how medical professionals have responded, they've laughed at stuff that I went, oh, I never would have got that. But it's not indulgent, I think, is what I really enjoy about it.
Cute little inside jokes, but also so realistic in the fact that it's just a walking past and making a quick mark because they have to get to the next case. A patient is waiting. Someone is dying. Someone needs help.
There's
so
always something to interrupt.
Always something to do.
Very real time in that way.
Yeah.
But even with the real time, you can't compare it to like 24 when that was real time, because that was drama and silly. But then this is, I don't know, it's somehow found a midpoint between documentary and scripted. It's, fascinating.
So one of the things that the medical community has really loved about the Pitt is the way that it's shown burnout with that very unflinching, real kind of way. I think it really struck a chord. It also, as we've said, the terminology is very accurate, the team dynamics, all of that. And I guess that is such a sign that the show has done such a good job, that the actual community it's based on absolutely loves it. Grace, take us through some of the reactions that we've seen coming out of the show.
So there is a YouTuber called Dr. Mike, who I believe you know.
Do I know him
personally?
Do you know him personally?
No, I just love and behold him on a very high pedestal.
So he's a doctor first and foremost, so he has a medical qualification, but he does have a YouTube channel where he rates and reviews medical dramas. So I did find him through a Grey's Anatomy review and him saying how accurate it was. It's not very accurate at all. I think the only thing he was like, that's true to life, is the on-call rooms. He was like, oh yeah, they're great, but nothing else was accurate at all. But, that's okay. We'll still watch it.
Creative license.
Don't diss Shonda.
So he's saying the hookups in the on-call rooms are accurate.
Yeah, is that the most accurate part?
Yeah. That's it. It wasn't just the bed formatting. So he did a react video to this, and there's a bunch of clips on YouTube, on TikTok, of medical professionals looking at the scenes, and it is so accurate they're able to be nitpicky. So when they were doing a certain procedure, they were like, oh, I wouldn't hold the needle like that. So that we're at that granular level of analysis. And in the Pitt Fest episodes, they have this an IO gun. I don't know if you remember this. It's where they're putting. Of course you do. You could do it. You could use one.
I can use one of those for sure. Do you want to trust me? Let's go.
Not at all.
Where they put the IV through their arm, and it's a little gun, and they're like, oh, they'd probably get an IO. Oh, look, there it is. And they said, oh, I'd probably puncture the skin first before the gun because the skin twists. So they're getting really granular. But there is one episode that has medical professionals quite annoyed of the inaccuracy of it. And that is the shoulder dystocia episode. So that's episode 11. It's called 5 p.m. And a woman comes into the ER and she's in labour. And so shoulder dystocia, again, I'm not a medical professional, but maybe Jess, I can see if this is correct. It's when shoulder dystocia happens. Because you're an expert now.
Not in shoulder dystocia.
Well, neither are they, apparently.
Apparently neither is the Pitt, so maybe I can advise.
So a shoulder dystocia, from my knowledge, from my medical knowledge from this show and from my midwife, is when the baby is coming through the birth canal and the shoulder gets stuck. It is one of the most dangerous things that can ever happen in labour and delivery. And it is like, it's code red. It's all of the bells and whistles. You would have a room full of like 25 people immediately. And it's something I spoke to Jana Pittman on the Hello Bump podcast as well about this. And she says it's so scary. It's happened 5 times in my career. When they show it in the Pitt, everyone is quite chill. And Dr. Mike is reacting to it and he's like, where's labour and delivery? And then they waltz in and they're like, how are we going here? And they said, that is not what would have happened.
Everything's fine.
And then they said, oh, we'll prep for an emergency C-section. If a baby is that far through the birth canal, you cannot do an emergency
the head's
C-section.
all the way out.
The head's there. And the other gem that the medical professionals told me is that when someone is over 20 weeks pregnant, they will not leave you in the ER because the ER doctors do not want to deal with it. Even if someone comes in 20 weeks with a broken arm, they're like, oh, go to labour and delivery. They will be, my midwife said, they are turfed so many people from emergency rooms that do not need to be on labour and delivery because you will never leave a pregnant person in the ER.
Yeah.
So that scene just would never have happened.
I feel like that's maybe one scene in the whole season that does serve as a bit of a storyline pusher for especially Dr. Collins. As we know, she's just had her miscarriage and she's kind of like, I'm delivering this baby. And I think it's frustrating that it wasn't medically accurate because the whole show is so on point. But
we can let it go for character development.
We can, like, for the sake of Dr. Collins, a personal favourite of mine and a personal close friend, I think she could have had that moment.
There's another moment that I want to mention when Dr. Mike is going through the Pitt Fest episodes and he's got an emergency attending who comes in and does it with him. And they're like prepping everyone for this mass casualty. And they go, here's the night shift doctor. He's come in early. And they're prepping all these traumatic things. And this guy just walks in, thumbs up and drinks his coffee. And the ER attending starts laughing. And Dr. Mike goes, why was that funny? And he goes, that is so accurate. You're so used to all this cooked stuff that it doesn't even touch the sides. And you're like, I'll just finish my coffee and which traumatic room do I go to next?
Yeah.
So there's, even within the performance and clearly obviously the direction, they've been so granular about making this so accurate.
Yeah, it just goes to show how many actual professionals from the industry they probably had on set advising and how they've really held it to that standard, which is probably why when there is one scene that doesn't quite fit in, it's almost a bit glaring in a way because all the other ones seem to be so on point. It's quite interesting to compare The Pitt to other medical shows. I mean, I, like both of you, am a huge Grey's Anatomy fan, and I think for me, I struggled a little bit with The Pitt watching the first couple episodes because the pacing is just so different and that glossy romantic arcs and the backstories, they aren't there.
You wanted Snow Patrol.
I did. I wanted
Let's sing along.
I wanted some tears. I wanted some, well, I mean, there are tears, but I wanted some really dramatic ballads to play. I wanted some on-call room hookups, and you don't get that in The Pitt. It doesn't have that soap opera feel because Grey's Anatomy really is more of a soap opera with a bit of medical stuff thrown in there. And there is a lot of that high-stakes drama, and romance really takes precedence over the medical stuff. So it is quite different, but The Pitt is obviously most often compared to ER. Critics have called it the most realistic successor since the classic ended, and it has a lot of creative ties as well, obviously with Noah Wiley, who stars as Dr. John Carter in ER, and then one of the ER producers, John Wells, also produces The Pitt and has directed several episodes. I know you both have sort of different backstories when it comes to ER and your, like, its connection to The Pitt for you. Jess, do you want to kick us off there?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I was basically raised on ER. I think Dr. Green's death was a core moment in my life. I still remember watching that episode with my mum and sobbing. I think I was like 7 or 8, which is kind of traumatic. But it was the standard. It's the standard blueprint for medical dramas. I think it was so ahead of its time that we can't help but to compare everything to it. And I think, as you said, The Pitt is the most like ER in terms of shows that we've seen of this caliber. But it does strip away, as we've said, the glossiness. It's bleaker, it's tighter, it's kind of less sentimental. I mean, ER was amazing, but it did kind of go into the Grey's Anatomy storyline route. Yeah. But for so many people, ER was the first show that made a hospital feel alive. And for me, The Pitt kind of felt like a grown-up, post-COVID, bit more depressing version of that. Doesn't lean into monologues or hand-holding or, as we said, big sweeping musical moments. Like, and even in Grey's Anatomy, if we compare it to that, you know, the music guides our feelings, whereas there's not really any music in The Pitt. I mean, you think about episode 8 with that horrific drowning scene, and it's just eerily quiet. And the same when Dr. Robbie is doing CPR on Leah in the Pitt Fest episodes. There's no background music. You're just kind of sitting in these really uncomfortable feelings. Whereas other shows have used music and storylines to manipulate your emotions, but The Pitt just goes, here it is, forces you to sit in them and feel your feelings, which is what it's kind of like to be there.
I will say on episode 8 that you just mentioned, like was inconsolable after that, the drowning episode. And I think in terms of how they bring character in, you've got Dr. Mel, who obviously has a sister and has a personal weighted kind of reaction to it, and how they deal with that in the unspoken. It's just her with the other younger sister sharing a moment together instead of the music swells.
Snow Patrol.
And she has to Snow Patrol.
Chasing cars.
There's no the fray, how to save a life. No, she's not going out into the ambulance bay and breaking down. She's just, we know the context, and it makes us feel smart, as you said at the beginning, Jess, that we just have to go, oh, that's what's happening for her.
Yeah.
Grace, I know you've mentioned coming to ER later, sort of after the Pitt, wasn't it? So you had an interesting sort of journey between those two shows.
Yeah, it was, someone sort of said, Noah Wyle, he was on ER. And I was like, I'm never actually seen that. And that
such
was
a babe as Dr. John Carter, just saying. Still a babe now, but babe town.
Yeah, but it was such a moment of like, how have you never seen this show? And so we started to watch it. And again, it was when I was pregnant. And then my husband said, I think we should actually stop watching this. And I said, why is that? And he goes, there's just an episode coming that is what put them on the map and really elevated the show as a medical drama. And I was
like, now's not the time.
And it's a pregnancy complication, and it's one of the ones that you're the most scared of, which I believe, I still haven't watched it. It is a woman has undiagnosed preeclampsia and hemorrhages, and he was like, I don't think you should watch that. And I said, no, I don't think I should watch that either.
Good call.
Even the shoulder dystocia episode of The Pitt, I had to look ahead to make sure nothing happened to the woman or the baby, because it's just quite triggering to watch.
Especially if you hadn't given birth
No,
yet. Right?
no. So you're like, oh, what more could go wrong with me?
They need to have little warnings beforehand of like, if you're scared of this isn't this episode isn't for you.
Yes.
So Noah Wiley's spoken on Dr. Mike's podcast, The Checkup, and he's actually talked about how The Pitt is more than just a reboot of ER and why he's really glad that's the case.
We actually found that it was probably better that it didn't come as an ER reboot, because it would have had so much attendant narrative baggage, so many Easter eggs you'd want to pay off for fans and who's going to come back, that it would have, I think, muddied the waters of the message we were trying to say about what's going on right now. This allowed us
start fresh,
to
clean
take
slate.
the same Trojan horse, but put a whole new cast of characters inside of me, and then, start fresh.
So there's a high-profile court case that has somewhat been overshadowing the buzz of the Pitt season 2 a little bit. Unfortunate timing for the cast and crew there. The lawsuit is from Michael Crichton's estate, the creator of ER, and it was filed by his wife, Sherry Crichton, who's basically alleging that the show is an unauthorized derivative of ER and that it breaches a 1994 contract. Jess, I know you're completely across the case. Can you give us a little bit of an update on what's happened so far and where it's all at the moment?
So the Crichton estate is claiming that there were negotiations to have a reboot of ER with Warner Brothers. Those negotiations broke down, and then The Pitt made its way onto our screens. They are saying that essentially The Pitt is a rebrand of ER without the approval of the creators and the original creators of ER. So after these talks ended, then The Pitt came out, and the Crichton estate is essentially arguing that they've just rebranded ER without proper approval or compensation, and they've violated the terms of this 1994 contract. So they're saying that there were elements of The Pitt that were pitched and talked about in these reboot discussions, and that this series would not exist without ER's DNA. So they're saying, you've taken things we've talked about in our reboot meetings and put them into the storyline of The Pitt. So, right.
It's just, I think that's really, I think it's a really hard one, because when you talk about intellectual property, Noah Wyle was a part of ER. So you're saying parts of ER are in The Pitt. It's like, of course they are, because Noah Wiley's there and some of the directors there and some of the technical people are there. But if you're talking about like the DNA of the show, which I guess that's what they're trying to prove.
Yeah.
I just think it's, of course, there's elements of ER.
Yeah, they're both in emergency rooms as well. Like, you can't reinvent the wheel here.
But that is Noah Wiley's knowledge. So at what point is the IP of medical dramas just in his head versus owned by The Pitt?
Yeah.
I think it is a bit of a stretch from the estate of Michael Crichton.
I mean, right now the court is allowing the case to proceed, which means a judge thinks that there is enough substance to support these claims. However, Warner Brothers has filed motions to dismiss, and they're arguing that The Pitt is an entirely original idea, new characters, and it's inspired by real modern emergency medicine post-COVID, which is why
Clearly
people love it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's no trial date set as yet. So they're still moving through the discovery and the, all that process. However, a lot of critics and legal commentators think the claim is a stretch, as you said, Grace, because medical dramas do inherently share DNA. I mean, there are only so many ways you can present a hospital on screen. But the Pitt's format is structurally very different from ER.
Very different.
But I think the case is being taken seriously because ER is such a legacy property. And it's the titan of medical dramas. And Crichton's estate has always been famously protective of that. So the Pitt to me feels like the first show in a long time that has really come along and challenged that legacy. And I think it's more about challenging ER's position as a sacred text of medical dramas than anything else. There's not really any storyline overlap.
I suppose it is hard to sort of draw the line because you could say that about a lot of specific genres. Like I imagine with legal dramas, there's a lot of crossover in the DNA and the fabrics of the show. So it is really hard to know where that's going to end up. Do we know if there's been any impact at all on the production or the planning for the upcoming season?
So I know this is what freaked people out a lot. So don't worry, it has not impacted season 2 at all. It's all full steam ahead. This legal fight is happening in the background and has no impact on the series itself yet.
Okay, so thankfully we're in the clear. Season 2 is still set for our screens and it's coming to HBO Max on January 8th. So it's going to be 15 episodes again, and the first 2 drop at once and then they drop weekly after that. And we know that the story picks up in the timeline of the universe 10 months into the future. Grace, take us through what else we know so far that's definitely happening in season 2.
We know it's set across the 4th of July weekend. We know all of the cast are coming back except for Dr. Collins. She did an Instagram post that said, loved my time on the Pitt, and sort of closed that chapter, which I was disappointed about because I really liked her story and I really wanted to get into a bit more of what her and Dr. Robbie's relationship was, but sadly we won't see that. And the creators said they didn't want to end season 1 on a cliffhanger of a mass casualty. They wanted the audiences to understand that there was another shift tomorrow and that you just can't get ahead of a problem like in the emergency room. So those are the things that we know. We don't actually really know that much except for the characters that are returning. We know that Dr. Langdon is returning. So
it's his first day back.
His first day back. But,
and also, Robbie's last day before he goes on a weird motorcycle voyage.
As you do.
Okay, so, as you do. So this is what's got me worried about my predictions that they're going to go into personal drama. I think as we've spent half an hour talking about, the point of difference is the pace in which they're in an emergency room. If we're going to have some whimsical, pensive times
I'll be on board with it.
Of his Eat, Pray, Love motorcycle adventure, I'm going to be well, anyway.
I can't.
I don't think I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I want no sex in on-call rooms. I'm just, on this show, I don't want it.
Controversial
But
take.
I do have some other predictions. I think because of the 4th of July weekend, I think we're going to see a lot of alcohol-related violence. What they try to do is hold a mirror up to certain things. Like they did trafficking, they did assisted dying, they did turning off of life support, they did a whole bunch of tricky subjects. And so I think they're going to tackle alcohol-related violence around big events. Just like in Australia, we know that alcohol-related violence goes up around grand finals and big holidays. I think they're going to talk about that. I think there's going to be a lot of fireworks injuries. I think the comedy from the show is going to come from the weird ways people have injured themselves by 4th of July activities, like a barbecue knife stuck somewhere that you don't want a knife, things like that. We've got Dr. Langdon returning, so that storyline about opioid addiction and doctors being able to take opioids or drugs from the hospital, they're going to have more commentary on that. And that may seem like something that happens in America or something that happens to other people, but I was really surprised. So when I had a baby this year and I was in the hospital and I had a C-section, so I was on quite heavy painkillers and opioids. And so when they came into the room, normally it's just one nurse that comes into the room to give you your medication, but 2 come into the room and they gave me my pills and I was like, cool, thank you. And I put them on the tray. And they said, oh, no, you have to swallow them in front of us. And I said, oh, is that so I don't like hoard them and then take a bunch of them? And they said, yes, but it's also to watch so the staff don't take any.
Wow.
And only give you half a dose of pain medicine. So I found that really interesting.
I think that's going to be a really interesting story point because he was so senior and he was like such a senior resident and everyone looked up to him and he had such a close relationship with Robbie. I think that's really been fractured.
Yes.
And I think coming back, watching that dynamic is probably one of the more personal storylines that I'm invested in.
I'll allow that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's based in
They
medicine.
won't be having sex in a
They won't be. Hey, they could, and each to their own. I also think because of the 10 months in the future thing that we're going to see the burnout of the interns and the medical students and how we've seen like a little bit of their shine taken away from them just from one day. What does that look like 10 months down the track?
The exhaustion is real.
And if they're going to be callous, if they're going to be bitter, like any of the leaning in to be so bright-eyed, if that's going to have disappeared. And then one thing that it's just a rogue prediction, I feel like they're going to bring in AI. I think they're going to do some type of like having to record it for transcript and be like, I'll use the AI transcription or the AI medical board. I just think
so interesting
because of just the explosion of ChatGPT and everyone talking about AI. Even when I go into GP appointments, they say, do you mind if I record for AI transcriptions?
Yes.
Yeah, interesting.
So I wonder if they're going to mirror that in the emergency department.
That would be very topical. I kind of hope they do that. Yeah.
Even in like a therapy respect, I mean, there was a lot of talk of mental health and psych evaluations in season 1. Maybe we're going to see some sort of, ChatGPT disaster.
Oh God.
Yeah. I think the 4th of July weekend setting really intrigues me because it kind of almost guarantees political tension. I mean, you've got patriotism and healthcare collapse. It's kind of the perfect storm.
Yes.
And the Pitt does reflect the realities of what's happening in America well. So I think, the real system in the US is being pushed to a breaking point, and not just the staff, it's the whole system. It's the insurance system, and we've got nurses being stripped of their professional status. So I'm intrigued to see politically where the Pitt season 2 takes it.
That's interesting.
I think you guys have definitely covered off a lot of the huge things we're expecting to see in season 2. I know one thing that got people very excited on the internet but is almost definitely not going to happen was George Clooney weighing in, saying he maybe wouldn't be opposed to a little feature at some point.
I'd do that in a heartbeat.
Would you? Have you talked to him?
Well, not about being on the show because it is his show, and I don't want to interrupt. But I am deeply proud of him, if I'm allowed to be proud of him, because what a beautiful show it is, and what a great success it has been, and what a fun thing to have him, kind of continuing on in a tradition,
I feel like he wouldn't appear in season 2, but he'd appear in season 3. And I have a theory of like, he doesn't need me to get the ratings for season 2, but as a little Easter egg, he might do season 3. I think that Noah Wiley and the team would want to prove they can do a slam dunk a second time, standalone.
Especially with a legal case. But we don't bring in any peaks right now. Yes, leave that alone.
But maybe season 3.
Maybe Patrick Dempsey can get on there too, a full little dreamboat feast for our eyes in season 2.
Yeah, I'll allow that.
Yeah, we'll allow that on-call room situation.
He can go back to the medicine for this.
Contact the creators.